Okay, I'm working on my 2007 PT Cruiser here today, and we've got an AC problem. Actually got this car and I fixed the transmission. I got a video on replacing that. I didn't even realize that there was an AC problem, but I'd mostly been driving this on the highway. I hadn't had any issues. It wasn't until I was testing some things out and running it at idle and using the AC that I realized that there was a problem, and immediately the AC wasn't working. The engine was sputtering, and it actually exhausted some 134A, and I immediately shut it down and was proceeded to try to figure out what was going on. So the first thing that I had done was I got over here, and you can see I've got some stuff removed here at this point, but you've got a temperature sensor that's right over here that's really difficult to get to or see, but it's over here. It's hidden right in below this power steering reservoir, right down in there. It's just almost impossible to get to. You have to, what I do is use a screwdriver to push the tab, and then I'll get down there with another screwdriver and I can pop it off, and then usually come back around and get in behind here with your hand to reconnect it. But anyways, I removed that just to check the fan at first. Fan came on, so it was running full blast, so I know the fan itself was operating, but when turning the AC on, wasn't getting any fan. So I started going through some checks. Obviously our fuse over here in our fuse box is going to be good. I'm going to show you this one right here is going to power your fan, 50 amp. Definitely check that if you don't have anything, but I knew that was good. And the other thing that led me to is the relays. Relays are a very big problem on these PT Cruisers, and very common to fail. So you can test the relays, or you can simply swap them around and test them out that way, and you're able to determine, and just by swapping them around I was able to determine that swapping them did no good, that the relays had to be good. It was working with one speed but not the other. So anyways, what I wound up doing was taking the fan assembly completely out of here. Now, just to briefly tell you, to remove the fan is not real easy. You're going to have to, at very least, take your battery tray out and remove your battery. You can see I've just got it set up here, 10 millimeters holding that down. Remove your battery out of the way. What I did was I used a, let's see if I can find it here. I used this, which is just a coolant tester. You could use a baster or whatever. And I just sucked out enough coolant out of here to get it down low enough to where I could remove this hose. And I just put that coolant into another bucket. And you don't have to drain that much where you can remove this, because you need to get this hose off to get your fan up and out of here, and you just fold this back out of the way. You also are going to need to remove this front brace. You can see I've got it sitting here. Got 10 millimeters, 3 on each side if yours aren't missing, and you'll have a studded nut and a bolt going through here holding to that. So at the very least, you're going to have to remove that to be able to wiggle this fan up and out of here. And you'll also want to be careful not to damage your radiator fins when you're pulling it up and out of here. But you can, once you get this loose, you can pull this up and around, get enough wiggle room to slide the fan out of there. And I will show you putting this back how this goes. So like I said, I got the fan assembly completely pulled over here. I've got the relay somewhere, throw it around here, but this connects to the relay cable that runs around here, and they bolt up here. Said these are a big problem with the relays and the fan, but I'm going to show you just what I did to diagnose, because I wanted to make sure before replacing anything what exactly was going on. I know I've got a fan problem. The fan's not kicking on when the AC comes on. Got to figure out why. You know, worst case scenario, you know, you could have, you know, something going on with the computer or something. But anyways, I'm going to set up, I've got a battery here, and I've got some little alligator clips, and I'm just going to show you what I've set up to test this thing out. Okay, and by the way, I'd also tested the fans were coming on when the temperature gauge reached a certain temperature. It was getting a little higher than it should, but it was indeed kicking on, preventing the engine from overheating, so it was kind of puzzling. Here is these relays. You got your high and low, and it just hooks in. They bolt up here, and it just kind of clips into that, and then hooks around to the harness. Here is the connector that I'm testing the fan. Now the one, okay, you got this clip part sticking up here on top. So on the right side is going to be the high, the middle's the ground, the one on the left's going to be low. So we should be able to hook a ground to the middle and hook a clip to the hot to the outside there, and we should be able to get both of these should be operating if this fan is working properly. So I'm going to go ahead. It's got my hot there insulated with some tape, and I got a black for the ground, and I'm going to hook it up to the low, and we'll see what we get. Okay, so I've got those connected like so, and I'm just going to briefly test these by touching. You know, be careful. This is going to kick on. You don't have to let it run, but just be careful you don't have anything in the blades, and you're not going to be blowing stuff in your eyes while you're doing this. We're just testing it out. So I just need to touch to my hot and one to my ground, and just make sure, you know, they got them connected here. It's kind of hard to do this one-handed, but basically I'm getting nothing right there. So we got a problem with the low. So this thing should be kicking on. It should be doing something. So let's go ahead and hook it to the high side, and we'll see what happens. You can see you've got the hot now on the right, which is going to be our high. At least from this sticking up being the reference, it'll be the right. And then we got our ground on the middle connector there. So we're going to go ahead and hook these up now. Okay, and like I said, you'll have to definitely make sure you have a good connection, and make sure that your connectors and whatever you're using are good, obviously, before you do this test. But we're going to go ahead, and I'm just going to touch it here on the negative side and see what happens. Okay, and as you can see, we got high speed. And so this is just a simple test. You could also do this with a test light, and just make sure, you could use a multimeter as well, just to make sure before you go to replacing anything. It gets real expensive throwing parts at something when you got a problem. You definitely want to make sure, and you know, some of these can be, you know, expensive, some of these fans. So we definitely know that the culprit is the low speed side on this fan. Now it's really weird the way these work, but if one goes out for whatever reason, you got problems, because you need your high and your low. When the AC kicks on, it automatically uses the low. When your engine starts warming up, it automatically starts in with the low before it proceeds to the high, and that was the reason the temperature was getting a little bit higher than it should be. So basically what I've done is ordered another fan, just a complete assembly. I don't know how much these are at the parts store. I think that they're a little bit higher than online. I ordered a complete assembly over here for around $50. Now these relays alone, if you just buy these relays, are pretty expensive. So to get this whole unit with the relays and everything together for $50 is a good deal. And said you get everything new, so you know, why, you know, take a risk, because the relays are such a problem that, you know, it may, if the fan's gone out, then in a few years you may start having trouble with your relays. So I can't say, you know, how many of these PT Cruisers have been overheated, and you know, you've just all of a sudden had big problems just because of this fan. Either whether it be the relay or something. I had one that the motor was working, and the high and the low speeds were working, but the motor was getting too much resistance. Basically the bearings or whatever was wearing out, and it was just getting too much resistance, and it kept blowing out the one of the relays over here. So you know, you're driving around, all of a sudden boom, it goes out, you don't know it. It doesn't take long to overheat your engine, and then you got big problems. So with these PT Cruisers, this is one, or pretty much with any car with electric fan, it's a big deal. You want to make sure, if you're having any problems with your AC, your temperature, absolutely make sure that these fans are working. You know, might be one of the first things you want to check, because all of a sudden when you lose your fan, you're idling around in town, in no time your car is going to overheat. And you know, it could also, if this goes undiagnosed, even with the AC, you're going to destroy your entire AC system and have to be replacing every bit of that, because the high temperatures will just destroy a compressor in no time. So anyways, this is the entire assembly. Really good deal. You get your new relays and the wire harness and everything, and we just basically slap it back on there and go. The bolt up is the same. And by the way, as far as removing, you know, you can see you got 6 bolts that you have to contend with. Usually what I do is I will not put these on the side back in, because it's really very unnecessary. You don't need that many bolts holding this. And those are going to be your most difficult ones to remove when you're removing this unit. So you have to get to the 10 millimeters here on this side, and you got lots of stuff in the way. You got Freon tubes over here, you got the battery box and everything over here. It's just kind of difficult. You have to work from below and above to get them. These up here, simple to get to. The ones on the bottom are pretty simple to get to as well. With this fan, actually there was only the two in the top holding it, which, you know, that's pretty much good enough as well. But those are the only ones. Somebody had worked on this before, and the only ones left in there. So anyways, that's going to be your biggest obstacle. But you do have to get the 10 millimeters around this shroud to be able to get it out of there. So like I said, this thing's just ready to drop in. I'm going to go ahead and remove the hose I got up here for starters. We'll go ahead and get this battery back out, and then we're just going to drop it back down in here, and I'll just show you, you know, replacing this. I'm not going to worry about any of these extra. It looks like they may have left some of the bolts in there. I'm not really sure, but anyways, I'm not going to worry about the other ones. I'm just going to put the two back in the top. So we're going to go ahead and remove this hose and slide this here back. Okay, so we just got our battery out of the way. We undid this hose, and you just take and push it back under here, out of your way for a moment. You can see how we've got this room now, and we'll just kind of come down over here with our fan and slip it down into place, being careful not to do any damage to our fins on our radiator here. So like I said, we're just gonna drop it in just like this. This is the top. This goes over to my right side. We'll slip it up over this, and like I said, with this stuff, this brace out, you should have plenty of room to work this down in here. But you know, you'll still need to be cautious not to be damaging your radiator there. Okay, so here we have it down into place, and I'm just going to work these top bolts in. Said, you know, if yours has all of the bolts, definitely, you know, put all that you want to put in there. Mine only had the ones up top, and the other ones were missing, so I would like, if I scrounge up some more, I'll put the other two in the bottom. Okay, so we've just got down here and hooked up our 4-prong wire connector here. While we've got this battery tray out, it's a little bit easier to get to that. See the gray, we just plugged that in, made sure that it snapped completely. So we're going to go ahead at this point, just get our hose back over here and reconnect this. If you said just drain out a little bit of fluid, it's enough. You know, I see some people clamping them off, but I just prefer to take a little bit of fluid out. That way I don't have any leakage and stuff, any mess. Okay, so now we're going to be putting this piece back on here, and you should have 3 10 millimeters on each side that kind of hold this into place. Oh, and another thing I can already see, because I was moving this around, I don't have the radiator down into the grommets. Make sure that you slip them back into there. If you can't see it from up top, then just go underneath and kind of look at it and guide them back into those holes that they go into down below. Okay, so we went ahead, we said most of the bolts, somebody had previously worked on this and these are missing, so I got a bolt in here, set the radiator back down into those grommets. Now this piece here was also missing, and this is really one of the most useless pieces I've noticed on this car. Seems like the only purpose is for it to hold this air sensor up here. It's about the only thing it's good for. It's really flimsy, and you can notice how it's crinkled. It's because they've hit a curve on the bottom and they've bent the piece underneath. Of course, that piece being bent is also what's caused these not to fit properly. So the only way to fix that, if it happens to yours, is replace that brace underneath and then hope that they didn't bend the body too much where you can fit it back on there. So anyways, that's not hurting a thing like it is. We're going to go ahead and I think now work on getting our battery tray back in here. We just got a few 10 millimeters. Actually got it around backwards. And we're just going to put some 10 millimeters. If it hasn't been messed with, they'll have like, let's see, 5, like 4 here and 1 up here. Typically once these things get worked on, stuff gets lost. Okay, so I got the battery in. I'm just getting ready to replace this. Now I see a lot of these broken, and this is probably one of the first ones I've ever seen intact. They have these clips here that actually go down into the bottom side here, but there's also these little clips that lock in to these, and what they actually do when you push this on there, they lock in. So even though these clips are going down, when you first go to take this off, or the way these lock in, you actually have to push this down a little bit to get them to unlock, pull it back, and then lift up. And I think a lot of people just go to yanking up on them, and that's what breaks these right here. So you have to push down, unsnap these, and then you come up with it. So, and well, I mean, once they're broken, that's it. It's just going to be flopping around. So I'm going to go ahead and get these 7 millimeter screws back into here. I actually do have both of those on each side. Okay, so I'm just getting ready to pop this seal back on here, and I'm going to go ahead and take out, or put the coolant back in that I took out. I just had a little bit that we had to remove, and I'll filter this back through before I pour it in there. But I'm just going to go ahead and pour it directly back in here, and we'll top this back off since we had to remove that little bit. And we're just about finished up here. And we're going to go ahead and test it out here in a minute. Okay, so I've cranked the car up and turned the AC on, and as we can see, our fan is coming on. Now, I always assumed that the high speed kicked on with the AC, but that's not the case. It's the low speed that actually kicks in. But it is working like it should. And so that has fixed our problem. But you can see, you know, the AC is still fine. It didn't do much damage as far as, you know, lost a little bit of our charge. But, you know, if you notice a problem like that, your car bogging down, or your AC not working properly, definitely shut it down as quick as you can and take a look at this fan system and see what's going on. See if you got a relay problem, a fan problem, or what it is. In this case, it's the fan motor itself. It has a low speed and a high speed set of windings, and the low speed simply went out. Now, luckily, there wasn't any damage to the engine or anything like that, because the high speed was still working. It was able to keep the engine cool because it was kicking on once it would get up to a hot enough temperature. And for the most part, you only run into this trouble when you're idling around anyway. But anyways, this fan's got it all fixed up and everything's working as it should. We're going to go ahead and get our box and everything back on here, and we'll be all finished up with this. Like I said, I definitely wanted to cover this in a video, maybe help somebody else out. If you're having an overheating issue, an AC issue, whatever the case may be, definitely take a look at your fan system. So that's going to conclude this video. I hope you found it helpful. Please give it a thumbs up if you did, and share the video. As always, I invite you to subscribe. Thank you for watching.